Welcome to English and Grow. Today's topic is hygiene. So, what do you already know? I'm sure you know a lot. What about these words? Do you know that toilet paper could be splinter free? Do you know what a scraper is? Do you know feces? Do you know spatula? Let's dive into it. So, paper, as you know, was invented in ancient China, and it was the second century before Christ when it was invented, and it was used as toilet paper in the sixth century AD, but not in Europe. So, in 1850s, it was actually the year when the first toilet paper was made and used. And back then, you were lucky when the toilet paper was actually splinter free. You could just dream of having a nice, soft, three ply toilet paper as we can use today. Back then, people used different materials to wipe their bums. So it was, for example, moss, or they would use a sponge on a stick, and they would use one such sponge in the whole community, or they would use snow or pebbles. They would also use some instruments like spatula or any stick with something soft on it. They would also use corn cob, actually, and they would never use cloth because cloth back then was made by hand, and that was something you did not want to waste just like that every day. So, what about these words? Do you know that you need not just talk about crap? You can also use this Latin word, which is dog feces, for example, and you can talk about defecation. So, when you have a child, you know how challenging that can be to potty train your child. And back then, when people had really cold rooms, they did not really want to go to some um, latrine somewhere outside. They would use a chamber pot, especially when it was cold. And it might have a lid or nothing like this one in the picture. What about the royalty? So, believe it or not, but there used to be a groom of the stool, and that was a servant who had a really, I would say, disgusting, crappy job, but it came with royal benefits. So, seriously, the groom of the stool would wipe the king's bum after defecation. You can check out more in the link below the picture, and they would use this portable piece of furniture. Medieval castles, they would have this special feature on their walls, and that was called a latrine, or it was called even garderobe or privy chamber, and it might look like this one in the picture. So there was basically a bench inside this tiny room. In the bench there was a little hole, so you could put your bum there, do your job, and then the feces they would drop in the castle moat, where maybe it would drop into the sea if the castle was built on a cliff, or it would just land in the moat where it could be used during, I don't know, maybe besiege, maybe not. Many people would like to dive through a river of feces, but actually it was also used as fertilizers by farmers. Now, believe it or not, but this beautiful palace, which is on the UNESCO heritage list, the famous Versailles, was actually inside really appalling, and it was infested with horrendous stench because back then the people they would wear, the aristocracy, they would wear awesome outfits, but they didn't have any effective plumbing. They did not have any latrines, and believe it or not, but the rooms of this awesome huge palace were infested with feces, because back then people, when they needed to do their job, they would just drop their pants and do what they needed to do anywhere. I really find it hard to believe, but this is the true truth. If you don't believe me, check out some sources of weird history. Now, it was not just the feces, it was also parasites. So, even now, you can have lice in the hair, like children, they can. have their hair infested with lice. Also, if you have animals like even your dog, they can have fleas in the fur. And to get rid of them, even back then, people would use some sort of tweezers. They would use a comb, and they would also use a scraper to get rid of, you name it. A scraper is in the picture next to the brush. Now, it was not just about personal hygiene back then. It was also about looking after the dead, meaning how to dispose of the dead bodies. So there were special burial sites like this one in the picture. And I believe it was not just to get rid of some disgusting material, but it was connected also with religious beliefs that you better look after the dead bodies of your ancestors so that you are at peace. Now, hygiene was also about keeping your clothes clean. So, if there was stain on it or a blotch, you might want to remove it. Now, this picture is an image of Roman excellent plumbing. In Roman Empire, I mean, what they did as for the expansion of their empire, that's unforgivable. The violence and the bloodshed absolutely is unforgivable. But what they did as for the civilization, that public hygiene was important and available to absolutely everyone, I think that is something truly remarkable. So even now, you can visit the ancient Roman public baths. So hygiene is also about building sewages, which ancient Romans were really excellent at, and it is also about the disposal of what you don't need anymore. So back then, the villagers they would just burn everything every now and then, I believe. But what we have these days is dump sites, and that's becoming an ecological problem because we cannot just burn everything. Now, this awesome private bath. So, in the Middle Ages, it was actually normal to be stinky and it was considered virtuous. And if somebody wanted to have a bath or shower and to do it uh, regularly, that was actually considered to be a sin. Believe it or not, some kings and queens they actually took pride in never having a bath. Seriously, like Louis the 14th, the French king, he was said to have a bath only twice in his life. Seriously, if you don't believe me, check it out. Now, more of weird history. So, this is a picture of a newborn. That means that recently the baby was born. That means some mama underwent childbirth, maybe with the help of a midwife. Now, traditionally, this was the job of a midwife, of a woman to help another woman give birth. But with the rise of science, uh, more men actually start to take part in childbirth, and these doctors they also performed autopsies. Now back then that was a revolutionary act actually to open a dead body, first of an animal, then the dead body of a human, and to find out more about the organs which we have in our body. But what happened was that in some hospitals the doctors they would perform autopsies with their hands, and then without cleaning their hands they would actually go and help, in inverted commas, a mama deliver their kid. And in some hospitals the death rate of mamas was appalling. And there was one doctor from Hungary, Mr. Semmelweis. He wanted to find out what was really going on because in the hospitals where childbirths were only in charge of midwives, the death rate of mamas was not so high. Unlike in hospitals where childbirths were in charge of male doctors who performed autopsies. So what he did was actually to shock his male peers, his other doctors, his colleagues back then, and he told them that they should basically wash their hands. And He was mocked, he was ridiculed, and he lost his job because of such a simple truth. And he died in poverty in a mental asylum back in Hungary. So this until today is called the Semmelweis reflex or Semmelweis effect. That's the fact that even if something is true, it is not always accepted, and it often falls first on deaf ears. And in modern language, we can say that basically truth is first often labeled as fake news. So if you like homemade soap, if you like to make gifts from organic ingredients and prepare something like that, you might remember that this has actually been a long journey. So, what have you learned? Do you know what lice are? Do you know who a midwife is? Do you know what autopsy is? Do you know burial sites and blotch? This is it. If you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, support me on my Patreon, English and Grow, for more videos, language coaching, and Zoom lessons.